Hey guys, welcome back to Building a Basic Website from Scratch. Let's go ahead and continue. Last lesson we stopped at part of typography. This is going to be the second part for typography. It's going to be super short and we're going to talk about list items. But before we do that, one of the things that I noticed is that as we copied over our example for our quotes, we forgot to make this change right here to the table title that we have on the top, as well as the description right here. So let's go ahead and make that change real quick. And then we'll also update we'll go ahead and update the caption as well. So let's go ahead and call this in table 1.4. And this is going to be website quotes or testimonials. There you go. It's a reference for the tags that will be added, will be needed. Needed when creating a quote or displaying a testimonial. Once again, I don't like it kind of moving over, so I'm gonna go to toggle word wrap, and that way I can see everything on the same page. All right, so let's go back real quick and then we refresh this. This is a table reference for the tags that will be needed when creating a quote or displaying a testimonial. And up here we have table 1.4 website quotes or testimonials. So that's what we have there. We did that. So in this one, we're going to copy the table, and I'm not going to copy this one because this one has a lot more markup. So I'm going to go to the one for the paragraph with classes of H1, H2, and all those. So I'm going to copy those, and then I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to paste that down below here. And let's go ahead and change this one in the bottom. We're going to change it to table 1.5, and we're going to call these list items. List items. All right, so this is a table reference for the different list items available. All right, if we go ahead and refresh here, let's make sure that I didn't mess anything up. All right, perfect. So we still have the heading 1. Perfect. So let's go ahead and look at list items. So the markup for list items, we already saw some of it in the beginning of this series, which is going to be UL. Sorry, I need to keep these less than, greater than. So here's UL. And then of course we're going to close UL. And this is going to be for an unordered list item. However, unordered list items require not only the opening UL and the closing UL, but they also require the list items. So on unordered list items, and inside of it, we're going to need to paste these, and we're going to replicate this here. And then of course, LI and LI. So if we save these, you'll see that we have the UL and the LI in here as well. And then let's go ahead and create a quick example for this. So delete this one. And then here, UL. And then LI. And let's go ahead and call it on ordered item list item 1. And then we're going to copy several ones of these just so that we can have a good decent size list here. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And just for a bonus, let's go ahead and create a nested list just so that we can have that there. All right. And then here we're going to go, and again, we create the list items. And then let's go ahead and on order, let's go ahead and call it nested list item 1, and then 2, 3, 4. All right. And by no means, I don't know why I just chose 4 this time around, but that's what I chose. So here we go. We have these on order and list items and a nested list with another list item inside of it, right? I'll let you see it here if you want to pause it to copy it. feel free to do that. Remember, when you have nested elements, you have to have the unordered list inside of the list item. So remember, this is a child of these list items, not siblings, but a child of these list items whenever we have a nested unordered list. So if we go here, this is how the nested list and the unordered list item looks like. And here, let's go ahead and copy this over. Paste this one here down below it. And I'm going to erase all the other ones because this one we're going to build it little by little. So let's go ahead and this one we're going to change it to ordered list items. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And to make it an ordered list items, we're going to change that to an OL rather than UL. So order has a UL, order has an OL, unordered has a UL. Well, let's go ahead and change that here. Nothing else inside of the markup changes, but here's what happens. An unordered list items is just like bullet points. So you have the bullets, the circle. If we were to do another one, I believe that will be the square. And then if you look at over here, then this one, the order list item, this one you can actually will have an actual order of elements. So you'll have a 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then, I mean, if we wanted to, we could do type equals A or something like that. And then it will change it into A, B, C, D. I'll have a link to all these different types that you can do for unordered list items if you wanted to, from ordered list items, if you wanted to change those manually on each one of your lists. But we're going to make some changes globally so that all of our list items look a little bit different than what usually comes with your browser. So let me go ahead and erase that. And then again, we have ordered list items and unordered list items. So let's go ahead and create some CSS to add some styles to this. So the first thing, we're going to go to our styles to the very bottom. And like we've been doing before, we're going to create some comments. And then here we're going to call it list items. And then end of list items. And if you notice, we have our UL. Then we have our OL for our order list items. And then we have our UL LI, right? And then we have our OL LI. So again, unordered list, order list. Notice that when I start creating styles for a child or an element that goes inside of, for example, another element, I usually give it a tab so that I can have some separation. It's a little bit easier to read. As you can see from above, if we're just glancing this over, you'll know that these belong to each other and then these belongs to this one up here. So we're trying to keep it the same way just to kind of organize and make it easier for us to read. And also in case we decide to deploy this, sell to somebody or whatever it may be, then they'll be able to read it as well and be able to edit whatever needs to be edited. So here are a few things that you'll notice. If we go back to the browser, we can right click on this element and we can inspect it. Okay. And then here, if we click on the UL, you'll notice that there's margin and there's padding. There's margin to the top and the bottom, and there's a padding to the left. So let's go ahead and do a few style changes here and see what happens. All right. So let's go ahead and select UL. And then here we're going to change this to list style type. And let's do something like square. We save this. We go here. And when we refresh, notice that all of our unordered lists have now changed to what? Squares. Well, what if we want to revert that back? Well, let's go ahead and change that back. Let's go ahead and call it back to disk. And then when we refresh it, then all of them now has disks. But question though, didn't we have circles in the second list? What happened? Well, if you think about it, we selected UL, which is the element. If we go to the template and look at the markup, then you'll see that this is a UL and this is a UL as well. So what do we need to do to kind of separate them and understand that these are separate ULs that we're trying to edit styles? What if we wanted this first level to have the circle, but the second one, this disk, and the second one to have the circle, and the third one to have the square? So let's go ahead and do that real quick. We have a UL, right? But how about this nested UL? So we can do UL space UL. What this is saying is we're going to select an unordered list inside of an unordered list. Here we can change the list style type to, and let's call it something like circle. If we refresh our browser, then we have the circle back. Now, one thing that I don't like is that this space right here, they are not necessarily aligning. So let's go ahead and do the following. We're just going to test it here. Padding left 1 rem. If we make that padding left 1 rem, then that kind of gives it a little bit more, makes it a little bit nicer to look at. Let's go ahead and take a look at these unordered lists in here. See that 1 rem, that kind of fixed it a little bit better. Most of the sizes that we have been using though is 1.618, I believe, 1.618 em. So let's go ahead and use that value down here as well. So here on the unordered list, let's go ahead and do padding left 1.618 em. When we come to the browser and we refresh, then you'll see, okay, that changed that over. Okay, perfect. Now we have that. Now we have the unordered list and the ordered lists as well. I'm sorry, the unordered list, the first level and the second level as well. Let's go ahead and go back to our template. And then what we're going to do is let's create a third level so we can add an extra style. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and let's add it to the last one here. We're going to create another unordered list. So a third level, right? Third level list item 1. Third level list item 2, 3, and 4. So now we're going to save this. We're going to save it, go to the browser and refresh. And now you see, because we said we have an unordered list, we're selecting the unordered list inside of this unordered list, right? So then that's why the third level had these circles here. So guess what? If we apply the same logic, right? We could potentially just copy this, paste it to the bottom, indent one to the right, and then we're going to do another UL. So we're going to say that an unordered list inside of an unordered list inside of an unordered list is going to have a list style type of square. If we refresh this, then now we have selected our styles here. Now, again, we tried the 1.618 because of the separation here. We'll see if we keep that 1.618. Now, another thing that we can do here is also, instead of list style type, we can do list style position. Now, list style position, what it does, it allows you to set up your disks or your bullets either on the inside or the outside. The default value is outside, but the one that you can change it to is also the inside. So take a look at this. When we refresh it, you don't necessarily notice it here. When we apply it to the one below down here for the order list, it's going to make much difference. So again, most of the time, I usually just keep it on the outside because it's a lot cleaner in my sight, in my eyes. But you can always play with that. So since it's the default, usually I keep it out. And let's go ahead and change that to 1.6 or 1 EM so that they all can kind of align with each other. If you want to, I'm going to provide you this link to the CSS List Style type, not position, but property, where you have a whole list of all the different ones that you can use. So you have square, you have the circle, disc, and then you also have, for example, like you have decimal, if we wanted to use that as well. And here you can see, like, for example, the list of all the different ones, leading zeros, and if you want Hebrews and hiragana, so that's Japanese, lower alpha, lower Greek. You have all of these that you can change here, and then we'll be able to. We'll use this one real quick for when we do our order lists. So now that we've done this, let's go ahead and go into our order list as well. So here, let's go back. I'm going to copy this third level, and then I'm going to paste it in the very bottom one here. And of course, we're going to change it from unordered list to order list. And when we refresh our browser, now we have a third set of order lists. All right. Here, what we're going to do is, just like we did here on order, we're going to do the same thing. So order list, let's go ahead and change that to the list style type. And let's go ahead and look at all of this. And let's do something like, for example, is it initial? No. Let's go ahead and do upper alpha. That's going to be the one that we're going to choose for the first level. And we're going to choose upper alpha. And then let's go ahead and set up our nested order list items element, list style type. And then instead of the order alpha, let's go ahead, upper alpha, let's go ahead and do lower alpha for the second option. And then for our third level, let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to do list style type. And then here, let's go ahead and change that to a little bit like, let's see, there's a Roman one. Let's do the lower Roman. Okay. Those are the Roman numbers if we save this. And again, we're going to use the same padding left 1 EM as well, so that we can have the same styles there. And look at that. All right. So now when we look at this, now you have this order list. Again, you have A, B, C, A, B, C, D. Again, you have D down here, and then you have this Roman. Now, remember what I said? Let's take a look at this. Now, in our order list, let's do list style position. And in list style position, let's go ahead and change it to inside. Now, pay attention to what happens right now when we save this. Now you notice that even right here, this is the most visible one. When we do inside, now these are aligned here, and then the bullet points kind of follow the element to the right of it, right? Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and remove that and save it. See the difference? We'll bring it back and save it. And you can see now that we have made that change. And again, you can see much of a different look and feel than what you have when you try it up here, because all of these elements kind of have the same size. So it's harder to see the change when in this one is really noticeable as well. So now what we're going to do, let's go ahead and reverse this back, because I still like the outside look better. And let's go ahead and make a couple of changes to make it more readable. So we made it so that the padding has a 1 EM to the left for padding. However, I still would like a little bit more separation between this bullet point and the list item next to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our list item element that we have selected here, and let's go ahead and do a padding left of 0.618 rem. Again, trying to kind of follow that 1.618 rem or the gold rule that I've used in the other typography. If you use something different, please feel free to use whichever element that you, or degree of change that you had selected. So I'm going to do that. And when I come to the browser, I refresh, and now you see that there's a little bit more separation in between these elements here and the bullet points. I think it makes it a little bit easier to read. You could also, if you wanted maybe have a little bit more space between each list item, you could potentially just in the list item itself, you can do a margin bottom 1.618 rem, and this is going to be a lot, so just be aware. But see, you have a lot of space there. But if you don't want to, I mean, you could always just reduce the amount, so it's like 0.25. That'll have a little bit more separation. And then you'll notice though that each one of these elements right here, they are separated properly, but then this separation between this list item and this unordered list doesn't have that same style. So let's go ahead and make sure that we add that in here as well. So we're going to do a list item with a UL as its child, and let's do a margin bottom 0.25 rem. Okay. And if we do that, that didn't work. So let's take a look at this. Again, some of the beauty of coding life. All right, let's take a look at this. Oh, well, I see what I did. What happened is that I actually selected the unordered list and I set the margin bottom of 0.25. So what we need to do is do the margin top of 0.25. And now you notice the difference in the separation. Look, I'm going to uncheck this and check it back in, and now they all have the same spacing there. So let's go ahead and change that to margin top. And of course, anything that we do with the order list, usually we can do it to the unordered list and make it look very nice as well. Use some of the same styles, so we can even just copy this. And then, of course, our list item with an order list below it, margin top, 0.25 rem. Save this, refresh, and now the nested list also for the order list look pretty good as well. All right, so now that we have the styles, let's go ahead and create two more different styles that will be very helpful that we could potentially use throughout the site as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this order list again from the very top and then paste it. And then we're still going to do an unordered list, but we're going to do a class of unstyled. Okay. And of course, we need to have the same class of unstyled here. And then if we go to the browser, we refresh. Nothing changed. We've talked about that in the past is because we haven't added any styles to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come all the way to the bottom. Again, we're going to take leverage and use the opportunity to use CSS as the cascading style sheet to inherit all of these styles up here. However, we're going to actually make some edits or minor changes or modifications to this specific list down here that has a class of unstyled. This is what we call a class modifier. All right, so let's go ahead and add this style. So we're going to do an unordered list of class of unstyled. Correct. And then we're going to save that. And let's go ahead, and what we're going to do with this specific style is we're going to remove the first bullet points, and then we're going to remove that space down here only on the very first element. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So let's go ahead and look at this. All right, perfect. So we're going to go to the unordered list with an unstyle and let's go ahead and do list style type of none. And as you see, that removes the bullet points. So list style type none. And the next one that we're going to use is going to be padding left 0. And then that removes that one as well. And we can see this here. We can right click, inspect element, and then we see that we have this down here, right? So now the next thing that we need to do, if you notice, these unordered list items are not fully flushed to the left. And that's because we added this paragraph, or this padding, I'm sorry, to the left of 0.618 rem. Now we need to only be able to select this very specific list item. So what we're going to do is we're going to do UL unstyled. Of course, we're going to tab it, and then we're going to do greater than LI. What this selector is telling us is that you have an unstyled, an unordered list with a class of unstyled, and it's a direct parent of this list items. In other words, this is the parent to this element here. If we were just to do LI without this greater than sign, then it'll say any list item inside of this unstyled class. So it will select this. Let me go back down here. Oh, by the way, oh no, it's closing properties down here, and it will also select this down here. So what we're going to do is only select the very first level here. All right. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and save that. Make sure. Here we're going to select this. And again, unstyled greater than LI. I've already placed the link in the previous videos for CSS selectors, but I'll add it again this video as well, so that you can take a look at those as well. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the padding left 0. And then we're going to refresh. And now that we refreshed, you'll see that this unordered list item 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all the way to the left. And then you have the order list kind of happening afterwards. Okay. So that is the third style for the list items. Let's go ahead and add another one that we'll be able to use in this case. So in this case, we're going to add another one here. And this one is going to be a little bit shorter. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to kill all of this. Info 1. Oh. Info 2. Info 3. And info 4. And instead of the class of unstyled, we're going to give it a class of inline. When we refresh this, of course, we need to change this up here. Instead of unstyled, it's going to be inline. We're going to refresh it, so we have that there. So now what we want to do is make that these are all inline next to each other. So to do that, let's go ahead and make some additions to our CSS. So we're going to add an UL, an unordered list, with a class of inline, right? And here again, we want to remove the bullet point. So list style type equals to none. And then here we're going to zero out the margin and then the padding just to be sure. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select and add a different selector here, a different attribute. So here what we're going to add is a display, and we're going to select inline block. I'll go ahead and add a link to this as well for you guys to read up a little bit more. So display inline block, what it tells us is that the elements, let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is not set up on the right element. We're going to use it on the list item. So let's go ahead and add the list item. Sorry for the confusion. So UL inline and then list item. Because in this case we want them inline, we don't really care for having secondary children unless you want to go through kind of building those things. So here, display inline block. So before I refresh, these elements, these LIs down here, let me right click and inspect an element. So if you look at this, these are block level elements. If you notice, look at the little dashes that are going all the way to the right. It kind of tells you that these elements are occupying that space. Even though it only has very few characters in there, it's still pushing the rest of the content to the next line. When we refresh this, now you'll see that each one of these elements have this space in here. And pay attention to it. Now, because we use inline block, now it's saying if you have space, try to fit other content that also have a value of inline block next to it. If you notice up here when we were doing the paragraph inline styles, let's go ahead and scroll this up. Remember, paragraph elements, these mark, delete, strike, insert, all of these things that we have added in our last lesson, these are inline elements because the parent element, which is the paragraph, is the block level element. So what's happening is that the paragraph, if we right click here, the paragraph occupies the full space, but when we expand this and we click on this, this is an inline element. See the difference between inline? It depending on the size, allows for other content to go around it as long as the rest of the content is inline as well. And the paragraph level or block element occupies the full space regardless, as much space as it has available. So let's go down here. All right. If we go down here to the list items, now we have these elements and they're all next to each other. Now, one thing that we could do to make it a little bit nicer and to avoid issues from spacing, like if we were to have more elements in here, is to add padding all around the box. Because what would happen, let's go ahead and do the following. And again, I'm just doing this real quick just so you can see what's going to happen. All right. It says, all right, so let me copy this. All right. Now that you can see this, here we have this info, and you kind of have a little bit of spacing and separation and this white space in here as well. So one thing that we can do is, now that we have this inline block, is we can give it a padding all around. So like, for example, something like maybe 1 rem top and bottom, and then 1.618 rem for left and right. So maybe that's something that we can do. Maybe if we want to, we can just half it. Maybe 0.5 rem top and bottom. And then let's go ahead and just do 1 rem left and right, so that these are still going next to each other. You see that now that we have that purple box all around it. And maybe remove the margin bottom to be 0. And that way we avoid having extra space. But as you can see, now we have a way to use a list element and kind of use it so that you can have more information. And maybe later on, if you wanted to, we're not going to do this here, but as you progress, maybe you can do something like a background color of like F7, 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 which is like a light gray. We can do a margin bottom of something like 0.75 rem to give it a little more space, or you know what, 1 rem to the margin bottom, margin right, 1 rem, so that it has a little more space. This kind of look like they're all kind of spaced more evenly. And then here we can do something like a border radius of 25%, or you know what, let's go ahead and do 1 rem. And then now these look kind of like pills. Maybe it's a little bit hard to see on your screen, so let me go ahead and make it a little bit darker. So again, you can kind of add more styles to it so that you can kind of reflect that inside of your style. So again, this is a very basic style that we're just trying to use and create so that we can use in more elements inside of a site. Our site, maybe you're creating a list of, I don't know, maybe your skills as a developer. You have Photoshop skills, Illustrator skills. Imagine they can all be next to each other, kind of showing kind of like a bullet list of all these different attributes and skills that you have. So again, think about all the things that you are able to do. You will be able to do with this. So let's go ahead and change that back. And let's go back here and let's go ahead and add a padding of 0.5 rem and a margin bottom of 0. And then we refresh. Now we have this inline list style. We created all these 4 different ones. Again, we have the unordered list. We changed the different types that we're going to use for the list style types. Same thing for the order lists. We have the ABC, uppercase, ABCD, lowercase, and then we have the lowercase Romans. We have the unordered list, but with a class of unstyled, meaning that the first bullet or set of bullet points, they don't have the bullet points and they're not indented. And then the last one, again, you have this inline one here. Now, there's one more that we're going to cover. And this one is going to be a little bit, this one is really meant for understanding content, and I'll explain that in just a little bit. So give me just a moment. Let's go ahead and write that down. So let's remove this specific class. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these because we're going to need another one. So this one is going to be a description list, or DL. Now, this one you may not necessarily see it a lot in a lot of examples that you see on the web, but I think it's very important to understand what it is and what it does, and then so that you can properly use it maybe in future projects. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's remove this down here. And then DL, which is our definition or description list. Then here we're going to have an element called DT, which is the definition term. And then we're going to have DD as our definition description for the term. All right. Perfect. And now we're going to add it to the one below it, DT. Definition term 2. And DD, definition description. Term 2. And now we're going to go ahead and refresh this. Again, we have DL, closes the DL, and then we have a definition term that closes by itself, and then we have a definition description which closes by itself as well. If you notice, by default, look at this. You have the definition term up here, and then you have the definition description for the term right below it, and it's indented. So let's go ahead and add some few styles to this just to make them a little bit easier to see. So let's go ahead and add that. In our list, definition term is going to have, let's go ahead and make it bold, this font weight bold. So save that up. If you go to the browser, you see those are bold now. And then we can also give it a margin top of 1.618 rem. I don't mind them being spaced out in this case. And see, now we have a separation between this definition and this definition. Now, the one problem that we have is that this definition, because we added a margin top of 1.618 rem, is that this one also has that space to the top. So let's go ahead and select another pseudo selector so that we can select the very first DT that we have on that list. So let's go ahead and add this over here. Of course, so that we can add the other elements, DL, boom, DT, so DL, DT, right? Definition list or description list, and then description term. So now DL, DT, first of type, margin top 0. Now, what this is saying is in a definition or description list, I keep on calling definition because it makes more sense in my brain, but inside of a description list, you have this description term. We're going to select the very first of these description terms, and we're going to zero out the margin to the top. So here we go. When we come back here, you'll see that this is going to jump up. There you go. So now you can see that we have these styles put in place. Again, these are automatic. Our definition list, if we wanted to, we can zero it out for margin top and bottom, but I think we're going to keep it like that for right now. Again, once we start plugging and playing and using our design and adding all of these different elements, then we can tweak our typography. It's very hard to, right off the bat, create a typography style that applies great in every single case. So as you're building your site, you're going to find yourself and you're going to see me tweak the typography as we're going and adding elements and seeing how they actually play with each other and work with each other. So again, definition term, this is another thing that you are now able to use. And I think it's really great to know as much as you can to be able to use it properly, make it semantically correct. If a search engine is looking for a specific topic, they will recognize that this is a definition term and that you have a specific value inside of the definition description, And maybe if you're looking for a definition in particular, maybe that's where the search engine gets that value from. So again, something to think about, and keeping things kind of cleared up and make sure that it's semantically correct and that it's useful, not only for your users, but also for search engine optimization purposes as well. So in this lesson, we really talked about list items. We talked about unordered list, order list, unordered list with an unstyled class, inline list, as well as these definition terms, definition description, definition list, or description list. So just go ahead and take a look at this. If you need to, go ahead and rewatch it and look at all the styles that we added. I will have links to the elements or the different CSS styles and even some of the typography elements that we added today, so that we can you can review them and maybe expand your knowledge as well. So in the next video, what we're going to talk about is we're going to learn about Flexbox so that we can create our grid system. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.